How her journey began. What if I told you that one of the most powerful women of the 20th century wasn't born with power? That she didn't command attention with beauty or charm, but reshaped the world with integrity, endurance, and fearless truth? This is the story of Eleanor Roosevelt, not just a first lady, but a global architect of human rights. A woman whose name was once a whisper in privileged halls and became a thunderous echo in the chambers of justice. She was born unwanted, called Granny by her own mother for looking too serious, too strange. She lost both parents before the age of 10. She was shy, socially awkward, and hid behind her books. But within her quietude, something was forming. A deep, listening intelligence. She would not remain in the shadows. Eleanor Roosevelt did not become great because the world invited her to. She became great because she refused to be erased. This is not just a story about politics, it's a story about personal revolution, how pain becomes purpose, how invisibility breeds vision, and how one woman dared to redefine what it meant to lead, not by command, but by conscience. By the end of her life, she would be known as the First Lady of the world. But to understand that triumph, you must understand the shadows she walked through first. A hard childhood in a wealthy family. Eleanor Roosevelt was born on October 11, 1884, in New York City, into one of the wealthiest and most prestigious families in America. Her father, Elliot Roosevelt, was the younger brother of Theodore Roosevelt. Her mother, Anna Hall Roosevelt, descended from elite social circles. But privilege did not protect her. Her mother was cold, dismissive. She saw Eleanor as a disappointment, physically plain, emotionally strange. She often mocked her daughter, calling her Granny, for her quiet, stern expressions. Eleanor would later write, "No one, not even my mother, ever called me beautiful." Her father, in contrast, adored her. He called her Little Nell and showered her with affection. But Elliot Roosevelt was a deeply troubled man. He struggled with alcoholism and mental illness. After a scandal and an institutionalization, he was cast out from society. He died when Eleanor was just 10. Her mother had died 2 years earlier from diphtheria. Eleanor was orphaned and invisible. She went to live with her strict maternal grandmother, Mary Hall, in Tivoli, New York. The household was rigid, and Eleanor was made to feel like a burden. Her sense of self was thin, her confidence nearly non-existent, but inside she was observing, watching, learning. She found solace in books, especially the works of Dickens and poetry by Tennyson. She began journaling, reflecting on society, justice, and sorrow. Her empathy, even then, ran deep. Everything began to change when she was sent to study at Allenswood Academy in London under the direction of a bold educator, Marie Souvestre. Souvestre didn't just teach literature or French, she taught young women to think, to debate, to question. She saw potential in Eleanor no one else had. Under her mentorship, Eleanor blossomed. She traveled, she engaged with ideas, she discovered her voice. When she returned to the US at 18, she was still quiet, but never again silent. Marriage, betrayal, and the beginning of change. At 21, Eleanor Roosevelt married her distant cousin, Franklin Delano Roosevelt, a charming, ambitious young man studying law at Columbia. Their union was traditional in appearance, but the emotional realities were far more complex. Eleanor gave birth to 6 children, 5 survived. She ran the household, managed staff, and supported Franklin's early political rise. She was dutiful, reserved, and, at least publicly, loyal. But privately, she was becoming restless. In 1918, Eleanor discovered that Franklin had been having an affair with her social secretary, Lucy Mercer. The revelation devastated her. Divorce was an option, but both the family and political advisors opposed it. Franklin promised to end the affair. Eleanor didn't leave, but something in her changed forever. From that moment on, she stopped being just a wife and started becoming herself. She began to engage in public life. She volunteered with the Red Cross during World War I. She worked in settlement houses. She taught at a school in Manhattan's Lower East Side. She also joined the League of Women Voters, the Women's Trade Union League, and the Democratic Party's Women's Division. Through these organizations, she met powerful female activists like Nancy Cook, Marion Dickerman, and Esther Lape, women who encouraged her political mind. Eleanor began giving speeches, writing articles, traveling alone. She realized she could think and act independently, even while standing in her husband's political shadow. When Franklin was stricken with polio in 1921, it was Eleanor who helped revive his political career. She pushed him to stay visible, to speak, to lead, even from a wheelchair. She became not just his partner, but his lifeline. And through it all, she was building her own name, one quiet step at a time. The First Lady Who Broke the Rules. In 1933, Franklin D. Roosevelt was inaugurated as the 32nd President of the United States. Eleanor became First Lady, but she had no intention of being a decoration. She refused the traditional mold, standing quietly at her husband's side, hosting teas and appearing in photographs. Instead, she redefined the role. She held the first ever press conferences by a First Lady, and she allowed only female journalists. This single act forced newspapers across America to hire more women. It was strategic, quiet feminism. She started a daily newspaper column, My Day, which ran 6 days a week from 1935 to 1962. It discussed her travels, her advocacy, her thoughts, and it reached millions. She crisscrossed the country, visiting coal mines, slums, Native American reservations, and migrant camps. Often alone, sometimes against her husband's wishes, she listened to the stories of ordinary Americans, and she brought their voices into the halls of power. She championed civil rights long before it was politically safe. In 1939, when the Daughters of the American Revolution refused to let black opera singer Marian Anderson perform in Constitution Hall, Eleanor resigned in protest. She helped organize Anderson's legendary performance at the Lincoln Memorial, attended by 75,000 and heard by millions on radio. It wasn't just symbolic, it was a shot across the bow of American racism. She advocated for fair wages, women in government, and protections for youth and the elderly. She often clashed with the White House staff, and sometimes with Franklin himself, but she was relentless. Where he was cautious, she was bold. Where he compromised, she confronted. She wasn't just the First Lady, she was the moral engine of the New Deal era. Courageous stands in a time of war. World War II demanded everything from America and from Eleanor Roosevelt. While Franklin dealt with generals and global alliances, Eleanor focused on the human cost. She toured military hospitals, spoke with wounded soldiers, inspected Women's Army Corps units, and visited Japanese-American internment camps, an injustice she quietly condemned. She was one of the few national figures who openly supported the Tuskegee Airmen and called for the integration of the military. She asked, "How can we fight tyranny abroad while tolerating it at home?" She didn't just ask questions. She challenged generals. She wrote blistering columns. She advocated for refugees, for fair treatment of black soldiers, for women in war industries. She was often dismissed as naive, even mocked as a busybody. But she refused to back down. Behind closed doors, she pressured Franklin to support anti-lynching legislation and to move faster on civil rights, even when it cost him politically. She knew that victory abroad would be hollow if it didn't lead to justice at home. And while bombs fell in Europe, Eleanor Roosevelt stood in the moral trenches, unwavering. A leader at the United Nations. Franklin died suddenly in April 1945. For many, it marked the end of an era, but for Eleanor, it marked a new beginning. She was 60, widowed, alone. She could have retired. She didn't. President Harry Truman asked her to serve as a delegate to the newly formed United Nations. Many scoffed. What could a former First Lady contribute? They underestimated her. She joined the UN Human Rights Commission and quickly became its chair. Over 2 years, she helped draft what would become one of the most important documents of the 20th century, the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. She worked across languages, cultures, ideologies. She debated Soviet delegates, pressed colonial powers, and insisted on language that protected all people, regardless of nationality, race, gender, or belief. On December 10, 1948, the document was adopted. Her speech to the UN remains legendary. Where, after all, do universal human rights begin? In small places, close to home. Such are the places where every man, woman, and child seeks equal justice, equal opportunity, equal dignity. She continued her advocacy in the US, denouncing McCarthyism, supporting civil rights activists, mentoring young politicians like John F. Kennedy and Adlai Stevenson. Until the very end, she remained a voice of conscience, sharp, bold, and unwavering. The legacy of a woman who changed the world. Eleanor Roosevelt died on November 7, 1962. She had no statues built in her honor while she lived. She didn't want them. But she left behind something far greater, a legacy of courage rooted in compassion. She taught the world that leadership doesn't require dominance, that change doesn't require charisma, that history can be shaped by those once told to stay quiet. She was mocked, dismissed, and underestimated, but she outlasted every whisper of doubt. Today, her words still guide activists, writers, and leaders around the world. In every march for justice, in every courtroom where rights are defended, in every classroom where young girls learn they can lead. So now, what will you do with her story? Will you let it pass as a historical tale? Or will you, like Eleanor, stand firm in your truth even when the world would rather you sit down? She was once told she was too quiet to matter, and she changed the world.